Today I'm going to talk about something very personal, which is the fact that I learned how to cure my own depression through a series of books, learning how to break my own feedback loops, therapies, and a few other techniques that I'm going to get all into in this video. This is obviously something that is hard to talk about, but I've tried a number of different ways to get out of a depressive mood, and I wanted to share them with you in case it helped anyone out there who's also struggled with depression. When I say cure depression, I don't mean to say that it's gone forever, because I still feel this persistent shadow constantly looming over me that it might come back at any time, which is still something I'm trying to get rid of as well, because I believe that it's possible to get rid of my depression completely, because whether I believe something can happen or something can't happen, I am right. There are still days when I am sad, and there are still days when I go down a spiral, but the depression I'm talking about is this deep and physical and mental incapacity to do anything because I am just so amazingly sad. And I suffer from this really deep depression. I would say I suffered from depression for most of my life, but it didn't really start to affect anything significantly until after I graduated college. And there were days when it was really hard to get out of bed, where I was just sleeping nonstop for hours and hours. Now, if I did that today, people would be very concerned about me because that's just not the type of person I am anymore. I suffered through so many painful days and ways in which it ruined my life or put a halt on a lot of my goals and dreams, where I feel like if I hadn't gone through it, I would be a very different person and I would have a very different life than I do right now in both good and bad ways. But this is not a story about my depression so much as it's a story about how I learned to cure it. So I'm going to talk about some of the techniques and books and therapies and things that worked for me. The first thing that really knocked my depression out of my brain, I guess, or made me feel instantly better was, of course, medication. I've been seeing a psychiatrist for a number of years, and she put me on medication, and I'll tell you which ones I was on, but just know that it's going to be different for everyone. At first, I was on Zoloft, which helped instantly, but created different problems for me. It made me a little too happy, where I would stop being myself. I would no longer work out or do anything productive or efficient. I would just go home and lay in bed, and instead of laying in bed being sad, I was in bed being happy. But the nice thing about this was that it taught me that the sadness that I had been feeling was not normal, nor was it healthy, nor was it something I wanted in my own life. Instead, it taught me that I could be happy, that this level of happiness could be achievable. And I decided to stop the medication because I wanted to try to achieve that level of happiness, or at least contentment, in a more natural way. At the time, I don't really know what I meant, but looking back, I'm not regretful of my decision, because over time I really was able to achieve that level of happiness. It just took a lot longer and in more painful ways. I stopped the medication. Instead, I found a different number of therapies and techniques that helped me. There were some writing and journaling exercises during therapy that I found really enjoyable. I really like doing homework. I really like being given instructions on how to cure myself, I guess. So if you're also like that, you'll really like writing a letter to your depression, writing a letter to the people who have abused you in the past without any intention of sending these letters to them, just so that you can get it off your chest. So those are some techniques. One was medication. Two was going to therapy and writing letters that were exercises given to me in therapy. Those were the two external techniques that really helped me. But then there were some things that I did on my own that really helped as well, which were reading a number of life-changing books. The first one was Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Viktor Frankl survived the Holocaust, and he writes about his experience and his search for meaning in that book. The book is vast and complicated, and I highly recommend it. But one thing that just really clicked for me was him saying that the purpose of life isn't exactly to search for purpose, but to give life purpose. So this is, of course, my own personal journey. Like, your depression could stem from something different, but I really struggled with this question of whether my life had any purpose, or what was the purpose of me being here. And once I read that, I realized that I was looking at things differently, and it really hit the nail in the head for me that I was spending my days being depressed, searching for purpose, when the answer was so simple that I could just wake up and give my days purpose. That solved all of my problems. Instead of having 0 days where I didn't contribute anything to my life or to my goals or to the world in some way, I could just get up and find something to do that would give back to my life and my goals and my dreams, some way that's pushing me towards living my purpose in life and living my dreams, or to even just contribute back to the world, which I find in a way is purposeful. So Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, highly recommend. It really changed my life. That was the first thing that I did for myself that wasn't external, that helped me to unlock something internal and mentally to help drag me out of my depression. The second one is a book by Joe Dispenza, and I know that Joe Dispenza is a little controversial and he's created a cult. I don't know if he wrote this book before he started his cult, but it's called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And whether or not you believe in all of his teachings, I just wanted to start off this recommendation with a caveat because I know that he is controversial. But this book was very helpful and it's changed a lot of people's lives. So just give it a read. You don't have to agree with everything that he says in the book, but I found this book very helpful because what it teaches you to do is to catch yourself in thought patterns that are not healthy for you. And it teaches you not only to catch those patterns, but to then break free of continuing down those patterns. So for me, that was catching myself whenever I started to abuse my own self by replaying events that weren't happening in the moment. Because what happens when you replay events in your own brain is that your body does not realize the difference between what's actually happening and what's no longer happening. And even though you're only replaying it in your own brain, your body will have the same stress signals, the same tension, and the same physical reactions as if the events are happening right now. So what the book taught me to do was recognizing when I would keep replaying these events from the past in my head and creating this negative feedback loop and basically bullying myself in my own brain. And it taught me to break free of those patterns and to change. There were other lines from that book that really stood out to me, especially the fact that when you reach the age of like 35, that's when most people have their midlife crises. That's the age where you're no longer really learning anything new. You basically experience most of what life has to offer. I mean, you'll still travel and maybe you'll start a new career or, you get divorced or married again or whatever. But the emotional spectrum of life has already been experienced. That's when most people kind of freak out because they're like, this is it, this is life. Like, I thought there was more to it. That's not saying that you can't create further experiences and you can't create a better life for yourself. But that's when people usually have that moment of freak out because they realize that life has peaked. That was the biggest takeaway from that book for me. But I suggest giving that book a read because there are other methods and meditations and techniques that he does show you in that book to literally what the title says, breaking the habit of being yourself. If there is something about your life that you're just not satisfied with or some way of thinking or doing or habit that you want to break free from, that book teaches you how to recognize it and how to break free from it. And it was life-changing for me in that way, in catching my own negative feedback loops and breaking free from the pattern of abusing myself. Another book that was incredibly life-changing for me was a book called The Mindful Way Through Depression. And that book taught me how to really meditate. And up until that point, I had kind of dabbled in meditating, but I didn't really know or understand why. But that book in particular deals with mindful breathing and mindful meditations in breaking free from depression. And I remember practicing these meditations at night during a time when I wasn't particularly depressed, because the book does stress that you shouldn't be practicing it while you're in a depressive state, because it's almost as if when you're in a depressive state, your brain will not allow you to consume any more helpful information. And so I was practicing these meditations when I wasn't very depressed, and it didn't directly impact my depression until one moment when I was just having this spiral of thoughts and negativity and just thoughts and thoughts and thoughts and thoughts and anxiety going through my brain, and I just couldn't seem to stop. And then I took a deep breath only because I needed to breathe in the moment. And it was almost like my brain remembered the meditation technique and was like, oh, we're breathing. That means it's time to calm down, And that was when I realized that practicing all these meditations, even when they're off screen, when I don't necessarily need them, turned out to be very helpful in the moment when I did end up needing them. And I really recommend that book because it unlocked meditating for me in such a kind and helpful way. There was something about the way the authors wrote that book that just made me feel like they cared about me. And that was something I really needed. And I still think about that book and recommend it to so many people if they're struggling with their own depression. You can download the audiobook, which comes with the meditations for free, so that you can learn how to do the meditations when you're not particularly going down a depressive spiral. This is the last technique, and it's very recent, which is a technique called heart coherence breathing, which is where you breathe into your heart and then you learn how to elevate your emotions by cultivating some sort of elevated emotion like compassion, gratitude, kindness, or love. And it just feels really good in your heart. And then you send that energy and radiate it throughout your body. And it feels amazing. It just really unlocked happiness and joy in my heart and my body. I don't know how else to describe it, but I would recommend finding a YouTube meditation that has to do with heart coherence breathing and give it a try. It's one of the best breathing meditating techniques I've ever tried, and it makes me feel so good, and I look forward to it every night. Once I do the heart coherence breathing meditation, I want to go to bed feeling that good, and it's been so helpful for my psyche and my nervous system and just calming myself down and just making myself feel happier and healthier. I was actually introduced to this concept because I do EFT tapping and I use an app called the Tapping Solution, which I'm not affiliated with in any way, but there is a tapping meditation on there called the Heart Coherence Lock-In Method. I gave it a try. It was like a very short meditation, 6 minutes tops, and it felt so amazing that I looked into it and went down a rabbit hole and continued to do more of these, and it's been life-changing in its own way, so I really recommend it. And I know this was something that was very lofty to state how I cured my depression, but these are techniques that I've learned over the past like 10 years to cultivate into my own life to help me whenever I'm in a depressive state, and I hope they were helpful to you. If you are going through a depressive state, just know that I've been there, and I know that it's really hard, and I'm very sorry that you're going through that, but you're not alone. There are so many of us out here who have been through that, and we can get each other through these tough times, and I'm here for you as well. If there's any of these techniques that really helped you, please leave them in the comment, or if there's something that you found to be very helpful that you want to share with somebody else, please leave them in the comments. I would love to hear more about them, and I would love to try them for myself. By the way, my name is Van Hoang, and I'm an author and librarian. My books include Girl Giant and the Monkey King, which is a middle grade novel, as well as books for adults like Monstrous Mrs. Mai, which is about 4 accidental witches, and Silver and Smoke, which is about demonic starlets. If you found this video helpful and you want more content like this, please give me a like and subscribe. You can also sign up for my newsletter on my website, authorvanhuang.com. I give monthly updates on my publishing journey, on what I'm writing, and other things that I'm obsessed with. Otherwise, I will see you in the next one. Bye.